I don't want to stress you out by trying to keep up with my lifestyle that I already have and am accustomed to. I'm going to these restaurants just for lunch meetings, and it takes you your whole check to take me there. You are still wanting a vacation for the weekend. I vacationing on holiday for the month.
Give it up for the LisaRaye McCoy. Playing the role of Diamond, did that affect you from booking other roles because people saw you as that?
Of course it did.
Your very public second marriage, obviously the infidelity and the alleged misappropriating the funds and all that stuff. Were the signs there and you chose to ignore it because you were in love?
I was not in love.
You weren't in love?
No.
Did your ex ever sleep with one of your friends? Celebrity friends? A lot of them? Were you the one who had to tell Tisha Campbell that her man was cheating on her?
Because we had a one-on-one discussion, and for him to bald-facedly say, hey, if it ain't me, it's gonna be somebody, it was like, what?
And unfortunately, he wasn't the only celebrity male friend of yours who would do that. You alleged too that Nicole Murphy had relations with your ex-husband. Were you two friends?
She was at my bachelorette party. But you know what? At that time, my mother told me then. She said, but you got to watch that one then. And she was right. She was dating Michael Strahan. So I called him. Let me send you a tape that I have of proof, And so I did. Friends don't do that now. Where I come from, south side of Chicago, that's an ass whooping.
One of your really good friends, Vivica A, was one of the reasons the falling out had to do with the fact that you felt your friends weren't there for you?
When I went to complain and say, I feel like a princess in a glass house, no one understood that.
Are you and Vivica good now? When you saw Will Smith slap Chris Rock in honor of defending his wife, was that the behavior of the Will Smith that you knew?
Now we know all the shenanigans is going on. It's like you protecting against what and who? She can do that herself. She was laughing.
Were you surprised about the entanglement announcement? You did Cocktail with Queens.
Yes.
It was a huge hit. It was you, Vivica Fox, Selena Johnson, and Claudia Jordan.
So it became a show for me that I no longer wanted to do and be a part of.
You quit?
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
I love a good deep dive.
Me too. Well, today we're diving into the life of LisaRaye McCoy.
Oh yeah, the Players Club.
Exactly, Players Club. You know her. And we're going to be taking a look at what her experiences can teach us about celebrity relationships and all the challenges that come with living your life in the public eye.
Yeah, you shared a recent interview that she did where she was getting really candid about her past relationships and even some betrayals and stuff.
Yeah, so we'll be breaking all of that down today.
Fascinating. I'm really interested to see what we can glean from her experiences and how they can apply to, the average person, even if we're not all super famous.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So one of the big things that stood out to me right away was her marriage to Michael Misick.
Oh, right. The Prime Minister.
Yeah, he's the Prime Minister of Turks and Caicos at the time.
I feel like I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, they had this whirlwind romance, met in 2005 and married in 2006 and then divorced by 2008.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it sounds like a movie.
It does. It really does. Yeah. Talk about a power couple, right? A Hollywood actress and a political leader.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she's been really open about the fact that it wasn't as glamorous as it seemed.
Well, yeah, I mean, any relationship that moves that fast, you have to wonder, what's really going on behind the scenes.
And she hasn't shied away from discussing some of the tougher parts of that relationship either. She's mentioned feeling embarrassed by some of the things that happened during their marriage, particularly allegations about Michael Misick's infidelity and financial mismanagement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, those are serious accusations that could impact anyone so deeply.
Yeah, and then imagine that times 10 when you're in the public eye constantly, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really brave of her to address these issues head on, even years later,
Yeah, I do too. It's also interesting that she admitted that she wasn't actually in love with Misick when they got married.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that was a really surprising detail for me.
So what were her reasons for marrying him then, if she wasn't fully in love at the time?
Well, she said that she did love him. Just not maybe the head over heels romantic kind of love. But she felt like being married would be good for his image.
Oh, so a strategic move.
Exactly.
Interesting. So did she think that her feelings would develop more over time or?
Yeah, I think she was hoping that they would deepen over time. She even used this phrase, dating within marriage, which I thought was really fascinating.
That's a new one.
But interesting, right? Makes you think.
It just, I mean, like you could almost compare that to like when couples try new activities or like hobbies together to keep that spark alive in a long-term relationship, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
They're working to build that romantic connection. But in her case, it definitely raises questions about, like the balance of power and even like her own agency within that marriage, especially given their very public roles.
Right, totally. And her story takes another dramatic turn when she reveals a betrayal by one of her close friends.
Oh.
Yeah, Nicole Murphy.
Oh, wow. Eddie Murphy's ex. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, LisaRaye claims that Nicole actually had an affair with Michael Misick while they were still married.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, that just adds another layer of complexity on top of an already complicated situation.
Right.
It really makes you think about trust and loyalty, especially, in those circles where personal life and professional life are so intertwined.
Right. And like the details that she shares are kind of shocking.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, she said that Nicole was even at her bachelorette party.
What?
I know.
Oh my God.
And she's also said that she has proof of the affair. She even mentioned that there was like a tape.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the impact of a betrayal like that has got to be devastating, right? Especially coming from someone you consider a close friend.
Right.
And then to have it all play out in such a public way, like that must have been so incredibly painful for LisaRaye.
Right. It's like more than just personal hurt at that point. It's just like a public spectacle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack. And it makes you think about how hard it must be to maintain genuine relationships when you're constantly in the spotlight.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this constant push and pull between who you are publicly and who you are privately.
Right.
And I can only imagine how much that could lead to conflict and just complicate even like the strongest bonds.
Right. So after all of this, how does LisaRaye approach dating now?
Right. That's a good question.
Yeah, it seems like she's really specific about what she's looking for in a partner.
Yeah, she has. She's been pretty vocal about the importance of dating within your tax bracket.
Yeah, she even said she doesn't want to stress out any potential partners who can't keep up with her lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's interesting. It's definitely sparked some debate.
I bet.
Yeah, some might say that limiting your dating pool based on finances is a little too materialistic.
Right.
But others might say it's just about finding someone who shares your values and your lifestyle. And we know that that is important for any relationship to be compatible.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right. But it's interesting to consider how LisaRaye's experiences, especially her marriage to a high-profile politician, might have shaped her views on all of this.
That's a great point.
And she's also been very clear about the other qualities that she's looking for, someone who's accomplished and successful and powerful and rich, God-fearing, family-oriented, generous, and a leader.
Wow, she's setting a high bar.
Yeah.
But it sounds like she's looking for a partner who's not just financially secure, but also shares her ambition and values. So she's not settling for anything less than what she deserves. And honestly, I think that's pretty refreshing to hear a woman speak so openly and unapologetically about, what she wants and expects.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it does make you wonder, though, are these expectations realistic?
Right.
I mean, could it be that by having these specific criteria, she's actually limiting her chances of finding love?
That is a good question. I mean, sometimes our desire to find like the perfect partner can prevent us from seeing the potential in someone who might not check every box, but could still be a really great match,
It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Right? Having high standards is great,
Yeah.
but being open to different possibilities is really important too. And it seems like even after all the drama and the heartbreak, LisaRaye has also shown that she can forgive and that she's grown.
Mm-hmm.
She actually mended things with Vivica A. Fox after they had a disagreement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she even maintains a decent relationship with Misick. Like, they still talk on the phone.
Oh, really? Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks volumes about her resilience, her ability to move forward. It's easy to get caught up in all the anger and resentment after a public betrayal, but she clearly chose a different path.
Right. And I think her willingness to reconcile with both Vivica and her ex-husband really suggests that she's not one to hold grudges.
Right.
It takes a lot of maturity to let go of past hurt and find a way to move on.
It does. It's powerful. I think it's a reminder that even after, conflict and heartbreak, there's always a possibility for healing and growth.
Right.
And sometimes, the most unexpected relationships can endure in ways that we never really imagined.
Definitely. It challenges the idea that all breakups have to be bitter.
Yeah.
And that there's no coming back from certain betrayals.
Right. So what do you make of her unconventional, friendship with her ex?
It is unusual, but it also kind of speaks to the fact that human relationships can be so complex.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the romantic love fades, but there's still this connection that remains.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like maybe for them, letting go of the romantic part of their relationship actually allowed a different kind of bond to come through.
Right.
One that's based on, their shared history and mutual respect.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a reminder that relationships are always evolving.
Right.
And the outcomes can definitely surprise us.
Right. And, it's fascinating to me to see how LisaRaye has managed to navigate the ups and downs of her very public life with honesty and resilience.
Yeah.
She doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And she just seems determined to create a life that brings her joy, regardless of what anyone else might think.
That's a powerful message, right? It
Yeah.
reminds us that we all have the ability to define what happiness means to us and set our own boundaries, regardless of, any outside pressures or expectations.
Right. And that's what makes her story so interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about Hollywood and all the glitz and glamour. It's about the very human struggles and triumphs of figuring out love and loss and forgiveness and doing it all while the world is watching.
I love that. I love that. It's a good takeaway.
Yeah.
Very relatable, even if our lives, look really different from hers.
Exactly.
We're all just human at the end of the day.
Right, exactly.
And it's so easy to forget that sometimes.
It is. And I was also really struck by how she managed to reconcile with both Vivica A. Fox and her ex-husband, Michael Misick.
I mean, that takes a lot of strength to forgive, especially after being hurt so publicly like that.
Yeah. Forgiveness is often seen as a sign of weakness,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it can be so powerful.
It is. It really is.
Choosing to let go of the anger and the resentment, not even for the other person, but just for yourself, for your own peace of mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like for LisaRaye, those acts of forgiveness have allowed her to at least maintain some form of those relationships, maybe in a different way.
Right. It makes you wonder if it's always necessary to completely cut ties with someone, especially if there was a genuine connection there at some point.
It's a tough question with no easy answers.
Yeah.
Every relationship's different, and
Yeah.
there's no one-size-fits-all approach to, dealing with breakups and betrayal.
Right.
But I think her story reminds us that sometimes letting go of the romantic element can open the door to a different kind of bond.
That's interesting. It challenges the idea that all breakups have to be super bitter
Yeah,
and that there's just no way to be friends with an ex or even have like a sense of family.
exactly. And it's something to think about even outside of, these celebrity relationships. How often do we hold on to anger or resentment towards an ex, even when it's not doing us any favors?
Right.
LisaRaye's story encourages us to look at those patterns in our own lives and think, is there room for healing here? Is there room for a different kind of connection?
Yeah. And I think that's such a valuable takeaway.
It is.
It's a great reminder that relationships are constantly evolving and that sometimes those most unexpected outcomes can be the most rewarding ones.
Absolutely. Speaking of unexpected outcomes, it's fascinating how all of her experiences have shaped her views on love and relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, after a public divorce and being betrayed by a close friend, it's understandable why she might approach dating with a little bit of caution these days.
Definitely. And she's been super clear about her desire to find someone who's not only financially stable, but also shares her values and ambitions. So do you think this is a reaction to her past relationships or just her evolving priorities as she gets older?
It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, as we mature, our priorities naturally shift.
Right.
We get a little more discerning about who we let into our lives.
Hmm.
And, when you've experienced the kind of public scrutiny and heartbreak that she has, it makes sense to be a little bit more cautious and selective.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about, finding a fling or a casual relationship. She's clearly looking for a partner who can really understand and support her,
Yeah, totally.
both personally and professionally.
That's something we can all relate to. Famous or not, we all want to find someone who sees us for who we really are. Someone who makes our lives better, not worse.
Right.
Yeah.
But some might say that her focus on financial compatibility is actually limiting her options, maybe even preventing her from meeting someone who could be a great match for her in other ways.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely important to be mindful of how our criteria for a partner might be influenced by, past experiences or just what society tells us we should want.
Right.
It's easy to fall into that trap of thinking that things like financial status or, social standing are guarantees for happiness and compatibility.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like sometimes we need to step back and ask ourselves, are these things really that important to me? Or am I holding on to them because I'm scared or insecure?
Exactly. And sometimes being open to different possibilities, even if they don't fit the mold we have in our heads, can actually lead to, really fulfilling relationships that we didn't even expect.
It's about finding that balance between knowing what you want
Yeah,
and being open to what life brings you.
exactly.
LisaRaye seems to be navigating that pretty well.
She does. She's learned from her experiences
Ugh.
and is using those lessons to create a life she actually enjoys. And if love comes along, great. But it's not the only thing that matters.
I love that. It's about recognizing that we are whole and complete all on our own,
Yes.
and that romantic love, while amazing, is not the only path to fulfillment.
Couldn't agree more. And sometimes that journey of self-discovery and self-love leads us to the most fulfilling relationships we could imagine.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into LisaRaye's world, I want to circle back to something she said that stood out to me.
Okay.
She mentioned how people often have preconceived notions about her based on her role in Players Club.
Right. It happens to a lot of actors.
Yeah.
They get typecast or judged based on the characters they play on screen.
Right.
And it's hard to separate the person from the persona.
It's like people forget they're just playing a role.
Yeah.
It's their job.
Right.
They bring their own talent and their own interpretation to the role,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that's who they are in real life.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how public perception impacts how we see ourselves.
Right.
How do we stay true to ourselves when we're constantly being judged and facing projections from other people?
That's a great question. And it's something we all have to figure out.
We do.
Whether we're famous or not, we all have to navigate other people's expectations of us
Mm-hmm.
and figure out how to stay true to ourselves through all of that.
Yeah, it's not easy, especially these days with social media. All the pressure and judgment just gets amplified.
Right.
It takes a lot of strength and self-awareness to block out all that noise and focus on what truly matters to you.
And I think LisaRaye is such a great example of someone who's doing that really well.
I agree.
She's not letting other people's perceptions of her define her. She's speaking her truth, even when it's messy or doesn't fit the mold.
Yeah, she's not afraid to challenge the stereotypes and expectations.
Right.
And by doing that, she's creating space for more authentic self-expression for herself, but also for others.
Her story really reminds us that it's okay to be different.
It is.
It's okay to have our own desires and priorities and to own them.
Yes, and to celebrate that instead of trying to fit in.
Well said. So as we get close to the end of our deep dive into LisaRaye's world, I want to shift gears for a sec and talk about some of the bigger picture things her story brings up.
Sounds good. What are you thinking?
Well, one thing that really stood out was her emphasis on the importance of dating within her tax bracket.
Uh-huh.
And while some might see this as materialistic, I think it also speaks to a desire for compatibility and shared values, which we know are so important for any relationship to thrive.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
And it brings up those questions about money and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Should shared financial status be a main factor when choosing a partner, or are there other things that matter more?
It's complicated.
It is.
There's no easy answer, but it's definitely something we should all consider as we go through our own relationship journeys.
For sure. And I think LisaRaye's story encourages us to have those conversations, to talk openly and honestly about our expectations and our priorities when it comes to love and partnership.
And her story also highlights the power of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And how relationships can change in ways we don't expect.
Right. It reminds us that we all have the capacity to grow and change, and that even those really tough experiences can lead to valuable insights and even deeper connections.
It's been great unpacking all of this with you.
Yeah, this was a good one.
LisaRaye's story is a good reminder that even behind all the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, there are real human stories happening, full of heart, resilience, and that never-ending search for connection.
Yeah, and it's those human stories that really make these deep dives so interesting.
They do. It's like we get to peek behind the curtain for a minute and see that even those who seem to have it all still face those same challenges and uncertainties that we all do.
Right, we're all just human at the end of the day.
Right, exactly. And so as we wrap up our deep dive into LisaRaye's world, I want to leave our listeners with a little something to think about.
Ooh, I like it. Lay it on me.
Okay, well first, I think it's worth thinking about how much public perception really impacts the lives of celebrities. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in the gossip and the headlines. But we have to remember that these are real people with real feelings.
That's so true. I think fame can be a real double-edged sword. It can bring you all these amazing opportunities, but it also invites this constant judgment and scrutiny.
Right.
And I imagine it can be really hard to maintain a sense of privacy and even genuine connections with people when you're constantly in the public eye like that.
Right, exactly. And that leads me to my next point. What about LisaRae's dating philosophy and her emphasis on, tax brackets?
Right.
Do you think she's being materialistic, or is she just being realistic about finding a partner who shares her lifestyle and values?
It's a good question, and it really sparks a lot of debate about priorities in relationships,
Yeah.
Is it all about money, or are there more important things to consider?
Right, and I think ultimately it comes down to individual values and what each person's really looking for in a partner.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer.
No.
What works for one person might not work for someone else.
Right, and it's a good reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to love and relationships.
Totally. We have the power to decide what we want and need in a relationship and to create a partnership that really reflects our values and goals.
I love that. And lastly, I think LisaRae's story shows us how powerful forgiveness can be, and it's a good reminder that relationships can change in ways we might not expect.
It's true. Even the most difficult experiences can teach us valuable lessons and lead to even deeper connections with people.
It really has been great unpacking all of this with you today.
Yeah, this was a good one.
LisaRae's story is a great reminder that behind all the fame and the fortune, there are real people living real lives, with all the heart and resilience and that constant search for connection, just like the rest of us.
It's what makes these deep dives so fascinating.
It is, and that's what makes life so interesting. And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a totally new topic. But until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.